they make these things very tall. So I'm like, you know, a little elf right behind it. So I'll stand out here just so that people can actually see me. My name is Gabriela Gimish. I work for TinyCo. I'm a product manager. I work with all of our games. And my job is to make sure that our users are happy, they get features that they're excited about, and that they play our games as much as humanly possible, and that some of us actually pay us for that experience. I will walk you today through some of our best practices around developing, scaling, and monetizing games with a focus on the Amazon platform. We're a mobile game developer that publishes on iOS, Android, and Amazon. And we've been successful on all of these three platforms. And there's a very deliberate effort on our side to create content that succeed on all of these three three platforms. Today I'll be focusing a little bit more on Amazon. What do? We do mobile games on a freemium model, and we deliver games as a service. What that means is that our games are free to download, they're free to play, and we are in the business of seducing our users, if you want, to paying us and making optional in-app purchases as they go through our games. Games as a service means that we are constantly adding to our games. We're making changes, we're adding content, we're adding features, dynamics, so that the game stays fresh, that the game keeps moving and keeps attracting people to it. So you may start our game with 10 features, and a year later you might be having 30 features in the game and a lot more content than when you started with. That's our model. That means we have to move very quickly, and we're constantly developing. We ship to our platforms every 2 to 3 weeks, including some of the long review times that some platforms do practice. And we ship new content to our games every single day. On the screen, you see our top titles right now: Tiny Monsters, Tiny Zoo, and Tiny Village. Some are newer than others. Tiny Zoo has been around for 18 months. Games as a service works. We're able to add to create a lot of longevity into this model. Tiny Village has been around for over 12 months and is present on all of the platforms. In fact, all of these titles are represented on iOS, Android, and Amazon. As a company, we're very plugged into the Amazon platform. We're built on AWS. We develop for Amazon, and we're very successful in the Amazon Appstore. By the numbers, as I said, our entire backend system is built on AWS. That means we have some pretty impressive numbers running through their systems. We deliver 400 terabytes of data to our users on a monthly basis. We have 25,000 hours running through their systems, and we run 175 million analytics events every single day. That's 2,000 per second across all of our games. And we do this with 5 backend engineers. These are people who do not sleep at the office. They have lives, they have wives, and there's fewer backend engineers than we have data analysts. What all of this means is that AWS allows us to grow very quickly. It provides us with scale. So as far as we're concerned, we're built on the AWS, and we're succeeding in the Amazon Appstore. Why are we so successful on Kindle is a matter of how we run our company and a series of deliberate decisions. Our attitude is very important. There's plenty of developers out there who are iOS first, who love their iOS users, and at some point realize that there's Android and there's Amazon, and they start developing for those platforms. We think of Android and Amazon as first-class citizens. When we create a game, we create it once, and we create it for all of our platforms. We have done the iOS first strategy, and it can be very painful to try to catch up. It's very painful to try to recreate code. So we came up with what we call Griffin. Griffin is an awesome cross-platform engine that we've created in-house that allows us to write 95% of the code that is common across all the games, and then plug it into the different platforms, iOS, Android, and Amazon. So our direction, our philosophy really is build once, publish 3 times, iOS, Android, and Amazon. Our people, we spend a lot of time trying to make sure that we optimize our games for the platforms that we develop for. So it's not just folks like myself who make sure that the features are interesting, the monetization tools are exciting and they work, and users are happy. We have engineers whose sole job is to make sure that our engine delivers quality and delivers parity and build to all of these platforms, and they're constantly building up the expertise for us to improve our capabilities. Finally, we run a ton of analytics to understand each of these platforms individually. So when we make $1,000, it's not, hey, we made $1,000 in Tiny Village or Tiny Monsters or what have you. For us, is where are these dollars coming from? Why are we making this quantity of money as opposed to less or more? And how can we get this to the next level? How do we make this better? The results of us taking a very deliberate step to be a cross-platform company have been happier players and more money. It's incredibly important that people receive a quality product. It's incredibly important that people want to play your game over and over and over. And we've seen that once we put our games on Amazon, once we put our games on Android, we've noticed very good results. All we had to do is give them a quality product. And when people are engaged and when people like your games and when people perceive quality, they're going to pay you more. So some of the numbers that we've seen on Amazon in particular and Android overall have been pretty impressive. In terms of retention and people being engaged with our games, Android overall tends to have better metrics than iOS. Amazon is even more spectacular. For Tiny Monsters, for instance, the day 7 retention, i.e. how many people come back 7 days after they first installed your game? How many of them are still playing? For Amazon, that number is about 30% higher. As a product manager, if you've ever had to battle retention and try to increase metrics, to get a 12% increase or a 30% increase is a mammoth task. You have to add in, I don't know, a battle system or a completely new set of features, a lot of engineering, a lot of time. We just had to show up with the same quality product that we showed up on the Apple Store. By the same token, engagement is also higher. People come back to our games more often. They spend more time in the games. And it's distinctly higher on Android, and Amazon is even higher than that. For Tiny Monsters, the day 7 engagement is about 20% higher. Those are very large numbers, and when you look at Android overall, it's 7% higher. The other important metric is monetization. You won't see it here, but for Tiny Monsters, for instance, the revenue per user is almost double. You have to work incredibly hard to create features to double your revenue. And as I mentioned before, we just had to show up and put the same quality product in front of them. There's benefits and there's challenges. Obviously, the metrics look great. You look at the dynamics of the marketplace are different on Android, and they're different from Amazon, and they're different from iOS. It's a smaller marketplace. There's fewer apps. There's apps that are that are on other platforms that are not there. So the competitive landscape is very different, but the user is also very different. Somebody who buys a Kindle is not the same person as somebody who buys an Android device or who buys an iOS device. And we have figured out how to cater to these audiences, and we've been able to produce really great numbers. The submission process is easier. Apple obviously has its own entity, and can take anywhere from 2 days to 15 days, if they will. It's obviously very easy for us to deploy on other platforms. We already wrote the code, so in some instances we can deliver faster to Android, we can deliver faster to Amazon than we can do on iOS. Griffin is awesome. As I mentioned, about 95% of the code is common across all of these platforms. We get to write it once. And then there's the benefit of the different payment flows. Folks come to Amazon and they already have their accounts linked in. They're more purchase oriented. They have the Prime accounts, so there's a little bit less friction. It's a different mindset that really helps the way we monetize people and the mindset that people bring to the game. There's obviously some challenges. Some of these So Amazon in particular is a newer platform, and it's still growing. And there's device-specific bugs because, you know, there's fragmentation across the Android, on the Android environment, and you have to deal with different resolutions, different kinds of buttons, different kinds of OSs. But these are transient. We have been able to establish a very good relationship with Amazon, and we work very closely with the folks at the Apple Store to make sure that some of these shortcomings are addressed very quickly, and that we have a good understanding of our user base, and that we deliver things that are specific to them, that are particularly meaningful to them. So we create different versions of the apps, different promotions, different kind of content for them. So the Amazon App Store in particular has been incredibly helpful to us, and we've been able to work that relationship into a better user experience. How does freemium work, and how have we made it work on Amazon? I'll choose Tiny Village because Tiny Village has been around on the Amazon platform the longest. It came out in April 2012, and it's our one of our free-to-play games. It's a resource management simulation game. The task is to build a prehistoric village. It's a cute little game that has made us very popular on Android, very popular in Kindle. We have a very solid 4.5-star rating. People absolutely love it. Lots of installs, and it's been top 10 in the grossing charts. So we've made some money off of this too. Our strategy with this game really is to give people a set of mechanics that they're familiar with, but that they're excited about. You start with 2 characters in a house, and you end up with a full village. And in the process of doing so, you're going to earn some currency, you're going to spend some currency, and we've designed the game in such a way that there's natural friction. At some point, you run out of space. At some point, you run out of resources. At some point, you want to get this really awesome dinosaur. And that's where we hope to convert people into payers. And that's where we monetize these people. Retention. We care a lot about retention because, as I mentioned before, if people don't come back to play your game, you don't have that many chances to monetize them. So the more we can bring them back, the more compelling these dynamics are, the more we have an opportunity to show them things that they might want to pay for at some point. How do we achieve good monetization? How do we achieve good retention? We do a ton of analytics to target our users. We spend a lot of time and effort to understand where are people in the progression. Who are these people? Are they young? Are they older? Are they children? Are they at level 5? Are they at level 15? What is their price tolerance? And give them something that they would be interested in. So this is a chart that we use very often, for instance. This is where are our daily users on the level curve. So the horizontal axis is our levels, and the way to read the bars is 10% of people are at level 15 on any given day. And if you look at the level 20 to 34 bump, that is a very special group of people. That's a lot of people that find themselves there, and that curve goes down. So, those folks are, A, there's a lot of them, and B, what they are interested in is something that is a little bit more relevant to the game. They've done the grind. They bought the dinos, they built the house, they have a village. These folks are interested in something completely different than the folks who are just kind of figuring out the game. Maybe, they don't know that they can get the pink house, or they don't know that they can get the dinosaur. So the dynamics are very different. And we spend a lot of time to make sure that we understand what the needs of these folks are and how to best serve them. Pricing is very important. When you develop cross-platform, you are going to encounter different price elasticity. Folks on iOS have a very different appetite from folks on Android, and who are further different from folks on Amazon. And it's important when we deliver one thing to all of these platforms to capture all of these taste preferences, all of these tastes and preferences. And pricing is incredibly important because this is where you convert your people. So we figured out over time that we have to have a low, medium, and high priced, and enough variety where there's a couple options in the low priced tier, so that early level folks don't feel like you're trying to stick a hand into their pocket, and they get a bang for their buck. And it's a small enough step that, you know, they're actually willing to make it. So something that is like $1 or 99 cents or something to that tune. And we notice that a lot of new users like that. The mid-priced is the middle of the pricing range is also very important. These are your people who are either advanced in a game or are a particular kind of platform, and you know they're still kind of on the fence. They're advanced, but they're not willing to spend $100 in your game. So they have to have enough choice. And finally, the high-priced band needs to exist because you have either people who are very inelastic, and you know what, they're going to drop $50, $100, or even more, and they're going to want long-term investments, things that they think are, that they perceive to be very valuable to the progression of the game, that they perceive to be very valuable to the dollar that they've invested. And this is very important to present cross-platform because as I said before, maybe your iOS user is a lot more comfortable dropping $100 than your Android user. The other thing we do is we try to show different features in conjunction with a price choice and really good mechanics. So when we presented folks at high levels with items that they perceive to be high ROI. So you present them with an item that is $25 or $50 that really materially changes the way they play their game. That is actually very important to them, and we've noticed that we noticed an increase in payers of 40%. When we did mini games or things that are like really exciting, that had premium features and that had different pricing across the platforms and gave people a choice, we noticed that there's a 30% increase in average spend. And when we combine all of these things, we actually got an almost doubling of revenue. So it's incredibly important to have enough of a choice to make sure that the different profiles they have on your platform find something that resonates with them, find something that is within their price range or their preference. How do we go about retention? Retention, as I mentioned, is the backbone of every game. You have to get people to come back to your game. You have to make people play your game. How do we keep people coming back? One way to do so is to keep the game fresh. We launch content frequently. As I mentioned, we ship every 2 to 3 weeks to pretty much every single one of our games. We create new features, we create new animals, new buildings, new things to keep people coming back and give them a sense of freshness. Contextually relevant things. As I mentioned, folks are at different levels. Folks are in different parts of the progression of the game, and it's important that they feel that you are meeting their needs. So for instance, in Tiny Village, it comes a time when you run out of space. And it might not be always obvious to the user that he or she wants to expand. So we are able to detect when you run out of space, and we're going to do something like, you know, we're gonna do something like throw in an offer for you to expand and say, hey, you run out of space. Did you know that there's a 40% sale on expansions? And that's how we get people, you know, we give them an extra piece of land, and then there's more game for them to play. They have to plant on that land, they have to build more houses, get another dino. Social engagement is the other leg of retention, and it's incredibly important because people have the ability of entertaining themselves a lot more than any single feature that I can put into the game. They like to gift each other. They like to visit each other. They like to motivate each other. So giving them the ability to interact is going to keep people in the game longer. So maybe I forgot to come to, you know, I haven't played the game in the last week. But if one of my neighbors, you know, sends me a present, I'm going to go and collect it. And therefore, and you brought your user back into the game. Finally, when we deliver games cross-platform, it's very important that we make it feel right and that we optimize for the kind of platform that you're using and the kind of device that you're using. So we spend a lot of time to make sure that users don't get really ugly images, or if you happen to use a device that has a different aspect ratio than an iPad, you're not going to get an image that doesn't fit your screen. So a lot of our effort goes into making the apps feel native, that they fit the full screen, that the UI respects the rules of your device. So for instance, Apple devices do not have a back button. None of our games on Apple, all of our games on Apple rather, have a little back arrow that you can access. That arrow is not present on any of the Android devices because you have a back button. It's little things like that. And finally, we put a lot of effort to make sure that your device can support the game that we serve you. So we don't solve for the lowest common denominator, nor we leave the devices out. So if you have a device that is super high powered, the game is going to act nicely, it's not going to freeze, you're going to see the gorgeous graphics. But if your device is not such, is more of a lesser powered device, we make sure that you have a decent game experience, that you have a good gaming experience, that your game doesn't freeze, that you don't have bugs, and that your graphics don't look crap. How do we do that? There's 3 different approaches to development. One way is to say, I'm going to focus on one platform and do an incredibly job at that. There's plenty of people who develop iOS only, and they make a lot of money, and that's great. There's folks who recognize that there's Android and there's Amazon out there, and that these platforms are growing incredibly fast, and they need to serve them. So they choose to develop apps that are just for those platforms. That means that they have to do twice the development time. And then there's cross-platform folks such as ourselves. We spent a lot of engineering time building Griffin, which is our cross-platform engine. Which means that you develop things one time. You have to do a little bit of customization work to make sure that things look right on Android, and Amazon, and iOS. But the bulk of the work is only done once. So what does it look like? This is really more of an accurate picture of it. 95% of our code, that big bubble in the middle, is written in C++, and it services all of the games. And then we have to do an extra bit of legwork to make sure that we look good on iOS, on Android, and on Amazon. For iOS is Objective-C. So we got to make sure that when you turn the device, it feels just as natural as if it was built in the native Apple application. That you don't have buttons that shouldn't be there, and that the aspect ratio is what it's supposed to be, or that the payment flow works seamlessly and is fully integrated. The same kind of work goes in adapting to Google Play or to Amazon. Each platform has their own payment system. Each platform has their own device requirements and UI requirements, and that's where the customization work comes. But the way we think about development really is develop it once and publish it 3 different times at the same time or as close as possible. Sometimes some companies take a longer time approving your build than others. Our backend, as I mentioned, is built on AWS, and this is what really wraps up our development process. We've talked about monetization. We do a really great job of monetizing Amazon. We develop cross-platform so we can very comfortably build for Amazon and release on a timely schedule, and we treat Amazon folks and Android folks as first-class citizens. And finally, our scale comes from the Amazon AWS system. We do an incredible amount of analytics, and we run a ton of data through our systems. And when you're growing as fast as we are, you don't really have time to develop your own little data center or your own internal network infrastructure folks. So right now we are operating with 5 backend folks, and we have 12 games that we're running and a few more in development. That is a lot for 5 people who get to go home on a weekend. We owe that to AWS. I'm not an engineer, so I can give you the product management perspective. When we were launching Tiny Monsters, we were looking at getting a few million installs in a very short amount of time. That for us was a step function in terms of install, in terms of getting it done in a super quick time, and we needed to make sure that our servers can take it. We used to run on a different platform, and under those circumstances, what that process would have looked like for us was, engineers would have to sit down about 2 to 3 weeks before launch and figure out how many installs are we going to get, what does that mean in terms of capacity, what can our servers take, and then design the infrastructure necessary for the extra steps. So I know it to be boxes. It's spinning up your nodes is what our head of engineering calls it. And in order for us to get 2 or 3 more boxes to accommodate the extra, 2 million installs, it would have taken our engineering team about 2 weeks worth of figuring out how to calculate the nodes, how to design it, how to fit it into our existing infrastructure, and then talk to our provider to actually make all of that happen. And 2 weeks later, we would have gotten all the system online and hoped that we predicted things correctly. With Amazon, we were able to get that done in a day. And we needed an extra box the day of the launch. And we got that done that particular day as well. And that is pretty incredible. The other thing that we do is tons and tons of analytics. 175 million events every single day. We have about 8 data analysts and, again, 5 backend engineers to deal with all of that. We have a massive SQL database. We have our own Tableau cluster to aggregate all of the analytics and make them look pretty. All of that is an incredibly heavy load on a server and on a system that already provides for 12 games. And we're able to function we're able to support all of that and to function without downtime because Amazon removes a lot of the hardship out of our way. So we can focus on making games, and Amazon can focus on keeping us up at all times. And I think I will stop here because the rest of it is very engineering heavy, and I am the absolute wrong person to walk you through how to plug in your systems into different things, nor do I want you to spend the next 20 minutes reading. So I will open up to questions.